Well, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steven. I'm a pharmacist and I own 54 units of real estate. So I've been getting a lot of questions in the comments lately asking, is real estate worth the stress? So real estate is not a passive way to make money. It's actually very active. And a lot of people think, okay, is it worth doing all this work to make $100 a month in cash flow? And you're dealing with tenants, you're dealing with toilets, you're dealing with termites. If you're in a or a tenant friendly state, you're dealing with tough evictions. You're dealing with a lot of renovations. You're dealing with a lot of repairs. You're dealing with insurance. You're dealing with property tax. Insurance can go up big time. Like on my apartment complexes, I remember one year my insurance went from 20,000 to 30,000. So you have to constantly shop your insurance around. A lot of times, insurance comes to do inspections and make you fix things, so it's more active. Um, do, and from there, I basically have to it's just very active. Like when you own a real estate portfolio that's more than a few units, you really have to treat it like a business. And it probably took me 8 years after I finished scaling and started optimizing my portfolio to really hunker down and really manage it like a business. It's kind of like you learn as you kind of go, and it's very active, right? Like I still work full time and I do real estate on the side, which is people consider to be a part-time job on top of that. So it's really an active business, right? And you would hope, if you're putting a lot of time, a lot of effort into something, you'd hope that you get a better return compared to the S&P 500, which averages about what 7 to 8% a month on average. So, like to me, the way I view it, and I think how most people view it is, if I'm putting more time into something, I would hope that I'm getting a better return on my investment, or else it's better. You're better off just doing the SP 500, where you get 7% over a long period. So, what are the benefits of real estate, right? So, the supposed benefits of real estate are, number one, it's the tax benefits. So, I don't really benefit the most from this category because I'm not a real estate professional and I don't do the material participation loophole. If you were to treat a property like an Airbnb or a short-term rental for a few months, do a cost seg, do a bonus depreciation, document everything in case you get audited, and you can use that to offset your active income. And after you've done that, you convert it to a long-term rental. So that's the strategy that I'm talking about. But there, you can usually get a nice tax write-off where if you buy $1 million property, maybe $300,000 you can write off doing a cost seg, bonus depreciate. If you can wipe off your $300,000 salary, and let's say you're taxed at 30%, then that's about $100,000 back in your pocket. So, that's the tax advantage. The other advantage is you want appreciation, right? So appreciation hasn't been as good recently in 2022, 23, 24, 25, when interest rates went up. So I think home prices have been really stagnant from what I've seen. They haven't really gone up. They haven't really gone down. It's been pretty stagnant for the past few years. So I think the appreciation is not as attractive right now. And interest rates are higher, right? So interest rates are higher. So what does that mean? That means that your monthly payments can be higher. It's going to be harder to cash flow. You're going to have to put a larger down payment. And your monthly payment, remember, some goes to principal, some goes to interest. If you have a higher interest rate, more goes to interest, less goes to principal. And obviously you have depreciation, which I alluded to before. So you can take the structure home, divide that by 27 and a half if it's a single family home, residential, or 39 years if it's commercial. And then that's how much you can write off against your income, right? Your passive income. So that's the whole appeal of real estate. And then obviously if you leverage real estate, so if let's say you locked in a 3% interest rate, but inflation is at 5%, then inflation is eroding down your loan, right? So like if I'm paying $2,000 a month for a 30-year fixed loan, $2,000 a month today is a lot more than $2,000 a month in 30 years. So that's the whole point of like the leverage, and then like basically having inflation erode your portfolio. So those are all the cons or the pros of real estate, right? But like I said, it comes with stress to manage real estate. And, it takes about 10 to 15 years to build a really good portfolio that cash flows, that is hopefully not a management headache, that is really optimized um, for income as well as expenses. So like what I'm kind of so I'm on year 8 of 10 or year 8 of 15, depending on when I step away. But like for me, as I've scaled and as I got bigger, um, I'm starting to repivot things so that I'm minimizing expenses. So what are expenses? I'm really tracking my P&L statement to a T now. Like I haven't been as diligent doing this the past 8 years because I was so focused on scaling and buying more real estate. But now that I've kind of stopped or slowed down buying real estate, I'm really focused on running my portfolio like an actual business where I actually watch the P&L a lot more closely versus knowing things at a higher level, which was how I used to kind of operate. So like, what am I constantly always shopping for insurance? Am I contesting my property taxes if it decides to double or triple on me? Am I making sure the property manager is getting multiple quotes? Am I making sure that the property manager isn't charging me unnecessary fees? Like I just found out that my property manager was charging me 10% to coordinate repairs on stuff, and I guess that was my misunderstanding of the contract. But anytime they coordinated a plumber, which cost $500, they would get a 10% fee for coordinating that. So I was just like, oh, I thought that was just baked into the 10% that you take from the rent every single um, month. But I guess not. That's an additional fee, right? They did say they'd waive it for me because I own a few properties with them. But these expenses that pop up, and I wouldn't used to track these expenses back when I was scaling because I was focused on like renovations and making sure these properties turned. But now I can watch a $10 expense and care more about it. Um, so, it requires like 10 to 15 years of grinding. So knowing that now, is it worth all that stress? Right. And like I said, to me, once again, it goes down to what's your return on investment? And are you willing to put in the time? So number one, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to put in the time for 10 to 15 years of stress, of getting slapped in the face by maybe you have a bad property manager, you have a tenant you have to evict, you have a fire you have to deal with, you have flooding you're dealing with, maybe insurance will go up. Like so many things can hit you every single day, right? I own 54 doors. I always get something that slaps me in the face, that blindsides me, regardless how much you plan and prepare. So are you willing to put up with that for 10 to 15 years? If so, hopefully in that 10 to 15 year period, what are you going to go through? You're going to go through one bull run, right? So I went through a bull run of call it 2017 to probably 2022 or 2023. And then you have to then after going through a bull run, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to make a lot of equity. Hopefully you'll have more cash flow as rents went up during that bull run. But then now you have to survive the recession, right? Which is the point I'm at right now, where I wrote the bull run. Now I need to survive the recession. So is 2025 bad? Who knows? Could be worse in 2026. I have no idea. But the key is you want to survive the recession. So if you can ride one bull run, survive one recession, and then ride the next bull run, you're basically financially free from real estate at that point, right? So that's why I said about 10 to 15 years. Now that I'm looking back at it retrospectively. So for me, key is to survive the bad times. So how am I trying to survive the bad times? Number one, huge reserves, right? So I don't talk about it as much, but I have a lot of stocks in a brokerage account that I have a line of credit against through Charles Schwab. So that's my line of credit for emergency repairs. I hope to never touch that. On top of that, I do have a decent amount of cash that I try to hold on. I try to hold on minimum 100,000, but I've been going lower than that, unfortunately. So I'm trying to rebuild that reserve up. Number three is I still have active income, right? I still work full time as a pharmacist, and I'm still building other active streams of income with, social media, as well as working on becoming a real estate broker. So I still have active sources of income. On top of that, my wife and I live very frugal lifestyles. So we save money every single month, and we have leftover margin to build a reserve or to invest, right? And then on top of that, I forgot what number I'm on, maybe number 6, number 7, we basically, or at least me, I'm now watching my expenses like a hawk. Like I literally have an Excel sheet now, and all my properties are listed. Now document what's my income, what's my expense every single month. So it's kind of like this bookkeeping I have not been doing, but now that I do it, I really watch. Oh, hey, why is this month higher for this apartment? And that'll prompt me to like have multiple conversations with my property manager to see what's going on. So for my 20 unit, I noticed I have so much plumbing issues, so much HVAC issues because it's an older apartment complex. So now what's supposed to happen, I'm not sure if it is, I need to validate it, but what's supposed to happen is that anytime my 20 unit needs a plumber, needs an electrician, needs an HVAC person to come out, they need to get my approval. Like I said, I wasn't validating if they've been doing this for this month, but definitely in January 2026, I will. So are they getting my approval? Because I want to make sure they're getting the right quote, and I want to make sure they're not sending a plumber just to fix a simple toilet flap that you can buy for $5 at Home Depot. So I'm really watching the expenses. Insurance. I'm shopping my insurance around a lot now. Like I switched 3 of my policies to Steadily, right? I'm a partner with them, and it saved me on average $500. So I convert 3 of my policies over, right? So I save $1,500. Um, I'm also watching to make sure like every single expense, once again, like every little fee, every little thing, what can I do to minimize this? And to survive a recession, it's become clear to me that, obviously I have a lot of doors, right? 54 doors. I gross 45K a month. And my goal is to have 20K net a month in positive cash flow. But in order to get to that point, I basically, in my mind, have to probably sell some properties and use it to pay off other properties and own it free and clear and have no more mortgage. If I do that, I can definitely get about maybe 15,000 bucks a month in positive cash flow, assuming I sell some and then pay some off and then continue to optimize my expenses, right? So that's and repivot my portfolio accordingly, or maybe I'm selling a property with some debt equity and repurposing the equity into more something that cash flows stronger than what it currently is. So, a lot of people who invested in 2017 or a little bit earlier, they have a lot of debt equity that they built up through, the crazy appreciation we had during COVID. So it's just really re-optimizing that. So that's been my focus. So, kind of back to the original question, sorry for the side tangent, but like, is the stress worth it for real estate? And like I said, first of all, you have to know yourself. Like, do you have risk tolerance? Like, because real estate, there's a lot of risk associated with that. If can you sleep at night doing real estate? Some people stay up at night and super stressed by real estate. If that's you, don't do real estate, right? It's too active. It's gonna be too stressful. You're gonna be miserable for like 10 to 15 years. But if you do have like risk tolerance, now at this point, it's just like you have to know, okay, do you want to partner or do you want to do it yourself? Or do you want to syndicate? Do you want to do this? And there's pros and cons to every single thing, right? Syndication, from my experience, the only person that becomes rich from a syndication is the syndicator, the person raising the money and collecting the fees. People who invest in the syndication, I don't know anyone that's gotten rich investing in a syndication. People got rich, then invested in a syndication. But I don't know anyone who got rich investing in a syndication, right? The only person that got rich is the syndicator. So for me, not an option, right? Raising private capital wasn't really my cup of tea, but fortunately, I have a higher income W-2, so I don't have to, raise private capital or, if I don't want to. So that's out of the way. Partnering with people, I don't prefer to partner because I want full control of my assets, right? And to me, I think partnerships are temporary. So let's say we're going to buy an apartment complex together, um, and as 50-50 partners. Eventually, we're probably going to sell that apartment complex and then 1031 exchange it into something else. And then at that point, we might split our different ways as partners. So for me, partnerships are temporary, not permanent. That's the way I view it, right? Because eventually, over time, the partnership worked in the beginning based on the situation, but in 5 to 7 years, both your situations could be different. So it's okay to step away. So like for me, if I did it, like for my C-class apartment complexes, would have been okay to partner because then now I'm realizing that the highest and best use of my apartment complexes um, is to basically, I bought it right, I fixed it up, raised the value by doing renovation, by raising the rents, by raising the net operating income. But now the best value is to do a 1031 exchange into an asset that is newer, that maybe you own free and clear or lower leverage, right? So like in that situation, then yeah, partnership could have made sense because C-class apartments, from my experience, the longer you're owning them, the more headache they do because they're older buildings, right? You have older plumbing, older HVAC, older electrical, more tenant turnover versus single family homes. And what people don't realize too is like with apartments, it takes longer to sell an apartment complex than it does to sell a single family home. I think single family homes average 3 to 6 months. Worst case, apartment complexes, I think 12 months minimum, right, to sell an asset that's more niche. So So yeah, you have to like pick your asset. Like, do you want a partner or not? For me, it was no, and then pick your asset class, right? So the simplest asset class to get started with is single family homes, right? You can do a duplex, triplex, fourplex, but like keep it residential. That's the easiest, and these offload a lot faster. If you have a fourplex, triplex, duplex, maybe a little bit harder to sell because typically you're selling to a house hacker or you're selling to an investor. But usually it's someone more investment oriented. But if you have a single family home, your pool of buyers is the largest because you want people who want to buy their forever home and they're not interested in investing in real estate. So, single family homes, the most liquid out of all real estate, right? So you have to pick, basically the asset class you want to be in. And then from that, just commit to that asset class for about 10 to 15 years, ride a bull run, survive a recession, and then during the next bull run, you can maybe sell some to pay some off. And at that point, your cash flow will be in a lot stronger position. So I'm probably at the phase where I want to survive this recession. And once the next bull run hits, I'm going to start offloading some of my properties and then taking some debt off the table to increase my cash flow and to reduce my stress. Because as a landlord, regardless of the tenant pays me, I have to pay the bank. If I don't pay the bank takes away my property. So it's the stress that comes with it. Um, so now let's look at returns. So I'll give you my returns on my first property that I bought. So I bought this property, $800,000, Bay Area, California, in Livermore. If you guys are from the Bay. I put 10% down, got a loan, 4% interest back then in 2017. And I bought for 800. Today it's worth about $1.4 million. And it got there in 2023. And it's been stagnant for the past 2 years. But that's about $600,000 in market appreciation, doing nothing, and chalk it up to some luck because COVID happened, interest rates dropped. I'd refinance it at 3.125%. And it appreciated like crazy. The rents haven't really gone up that much more in Livermore. So I didn't really raise rents that much. But, I put $80,000 down and, got $600,000 return on that money. And if you factor in principal pay down, that's probably another $200,000. So I put $80,000 in and probably made about 800K. So almost a 10x return on my money. And, albeit that was during a bull run, right? That's what I said. You have to ride one bull run, survive a recession, and then start offloading during the next bull run. Because right now, if you were to buy, it's stagnant for the past 2 years. Or if you bought, 2023 to today, it's been stagnant. Your interest rate's probably not 4%. It's probably, 8%, something like that. So, in that case, the stress was worth it, right? I've had the same tenant in that property there. So not much turnover. If they have a repair request, which usually happens to me twice a year, maybe I just text my handyman, they go there and they fix it. And this tenant's always been paying on time. So it's been a great experience, right, for this property. And I had a 10x return on my money. So obviously that's way better than the SP 500, but it was more active because it took me time to find my handyman. It took me time to over time raise the rents. It took me time to have principal pay down over time. It took me time to do a refinance when interest rates dropped. So it takes like patience and you need time to make it better. And like I said, you have to deal with the stress and be patient during this window. So it's hard to be patient when you're stressed. So in this case, it was good. But I had my mobile home park, which I talk about, where I bought it for $1 million. I put 10% down, so 100K down. I paid these consultants to manage my park $100,000 because they helped me buy the deal. And basically, the seller carried me the rest, so $1 million at 5%, and I was paying $4,000 a month. But I dumped in about $500,000. How did I get the $500,000? I did a huge cash out refinance on my portfolio, so I leveraged up because I didn't want to partner, and then I used that money to go buy my mobile home park and to fix it up. And I put $500,000 to fix up this mobile home park. Um, and after time, while owning the park, after a year, it became clear that the property managers were incompetent. Um, they were probably stealing from me in retrospect because I'm talking to the new owners, and they definitely were stealing. So if they charged like $300 for a bathroom vanity, they just would go to like buy a used one for like $20 and then pocket the difference. Right? That's the property manager special. And then on top of that, that's what the on-site property manager doing. The off-site property manager, they were upcharging things as well. So they'd say it costs $1,000, but then they were probably pocketing like a couple hundred for themselves, then give the rest to pay the contractor, and the contractor was then stealing by getting really cheap parts on top of that, right? So I was getting stolen from two ways. But the property managers were incompetent. They didn't really know how to manage the park. I thought they would because they manage 70 parks, but I think they're either A, managing 70 parks really poorly, or B, stealing from 70 parks that they manage, right? So like, welcome to real estate, right? If people are going to steal from you, and probably one of my current property managers, I wouldn't be surprised they're stealing from you right now too, right? It's just part of business, unfortunately. The only way to mitigate it is if you self-manage it yourself, right? So you can have a portfolio that you self-manage yourself. Then in that case, no one can really steal you besides contractors giving you a high price. But if you incorporate a property manager and you're investing out of state like me, bake it in. Like they will steal from you, and contractors will try to rip you off, and your PM will probably steal from you. So that's the cost of doing business, unfortunately, if you go out of state. That's another stressor added on top of there. But basically, sold my mobile home park, lost 100K on it. Talked about it on my channel. I have a bunch of videos about it. Um, and I had to basically do a seller carry second note. So I have a lot of my money trapped in that deal still, and I'm getting a monthly payment from the new owners. But it's kind of funny, like confiding with the new owners, and like we basically had the same experience of the same property manager company. And then like, yeah, she was just like they were stealing from her. And then she's like, they're probably stealing from you too. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, right? Like they probably their passive income was stealing from my mobile home park. But anyways, sold that. And I grinded for 2 years, busted my butt off. I put my most time, my most energy, my most effort into this deal, only to lose $100,000 in 2 years of my life. Right. So that's the cost of doing real estate. So in that case, bad ROI, right? I could have just taken that $500,000 that I dumped into that mobile home park, dumped into SP 500, and call it a day, right? Earn my 7% return on average, whatever it was during COVID. So it might have done better. So, that's the risk of real estate as well. Like you can put all this time, this energy, this effort, and you're not guaranteed a return either. Like you can do fix and flip and you win some, you lose some. That's just real estate. It's business, right? So, that's basically, and hopefully overall your whole portfolio. So yes, I took a loss of $100,000, but I've made multi-millions in my real estate portfolio, riding that bull run. So it's really like hopefully overall net you're ahead and you're willing to stay in. Like if my first deal that I did was the mobile home park and I got slapped in the face, I probably wouldn't want to do another deal because I'd be so discouraged about it. Right. So you always want your first deal to go well, um, and do it well. So knowing if you're brave enough to go into real estate, yes, it's more stress. Yes, you could have more return. Yes, you can also lose money as well. Whereas in my mind, index funds, if you never sell an index fund, you can't lose. You just have to hold it in the market for a long enough period of time. So, but with real estate, nothing's guaranteed. So, and like you said, leverage is cool and all, but like after a certain point, you got to reassess your leverage and whether it's worth it or not. Because like I said, whether or not that, assuming the tenants pay you, yes, you can cover your debt, but you're assuming that your tenant's paying you, right? And that's not always guaranteed the longer you own real estate. So, if you choose to go down real estate, overall, you should be making more than your 7 to 8% return on the SP 500. Yes, it's more active. Yes, you're going to get some losses. You're going to have to ride a bull run, survive a recession, and ride another bull run. And that's when you start to sell and deleverage. But once you kind of hit your enough, right, which is what I hit. I hit my enough, $5 million plus in equity in real estate. And now I need to start optimizing to like get more cash flow. So my goal ideally is about 10 to 20K. I'll shoot for 20. Maybe I'll get 10 to 15. But it's going to require me selling some assets, maybe my high tech assets that have more repairs, more maintenance, and then trading that, paying the taxes, and using that to start wiping off some debt, right? Whether it's building my ADUs, whether that's paying off a property, whether it's paying off my primary, some sort of combination of like paying off debt to lower my expenses, and really optimizing my cash flow. So it's basically deleveraging and de-stressing, right? Because I've dealt with this high stress for the past 8 years. So now I want to start taking some chips off the table and focusing more on less stress, more peace of mind, and more simplicity in my portfolio. Because that's why I wanted financial freedom in the first place. Is I don't want to create another job. I just wanted to take it easier and not have to like be time freedom, buy back my time, not to do a W-2, have everything on my terms, right? Live life on my terms. Like that's why I did this whole thing. So, and part of that is deleveraging, and maybe I just invest in SP 500. It's more passive, lower returns, but I don't think about it, right? So, if you are brave enough to deal with the stress and the headache of real estate, and you can grind out for 15 years and make it out ahead, then you're gonna have to basically start to repivot your portfolio to optimize for income, take off some debt, and then maybe at that point you can then optimize for like more passive things, right? Like if I'm making so much cash, I don't know what to do with. Maybe I'm just buying houses cash instead of leveraging like I used to in the beginning because I can, right? So it's a different game once you kind of like made it there. So that's what I'm trying to do now because I know this is not sustainable, right? For me, like just this constant scale, always chasing more doors, chasing more units. Like you have to know when your enough is. And it took me to like this year to know what my enough is and that I hit end game and that I just got to repivot my pieces. And it's going to take me probably a few years to do it. But once I repivot it, I'll basically hit the goal that I set out for originally. So now that end game, I'm like, I don't want to mess this up. Right. And as you in the beginning, when you start real estate, people are going to say, don't do real estate. It's stupid. You're going to lose your money. It's headache. That's true. And you're going to grind out for the first 5 years. The first 5 years. From there, you're going to feel like nothing's happening, right? You're going to buy real estate, manage real estate, feel like nothing's growing. Then all of a sudden, from like year 5 to 10, it's going to be exponential hockey stick growth, right? That's what happened to me when COVID happened. I had huge exponential hockey stick growth. And then now that I hit it, it's just about optimizing it and making it easier and less stressful for me and making it more cash flow oriented so that my portfolio is not dependent on my W-2 income. Instead, I want my real estate to replace my W-2 income. And ideally, if I can do it right, I can get 20K a month positive from that, and right off into the sunset, right? Like I don't need to be like super lavish, super rich. I just want time freedom. Essentially, I just want to be able to like do what I want with who I want. We all know this story. Like your alarm rings in the morning and you don't want to go to work that day. I still have to go, but maybe one day I don't have to go, right? Or I can take an easier job that's like less stress. You can be part time. It's just the optionality of life, right? That's the whole reason why I went to real estate and why I put all this, uh, you know, real estate for that long because I would see that it would make my life. You sacrifice 15 years to make the rest of your life better, right? Or that's the hope or the trade that you're hoping to make. So, if you can go through that, that's when it becomes less stressful, right? Because I see a lot of real estate investors now who have an end game. They cash flowing 10 to 20,000 bucks a month, and a lot of them they have a portion of their portfolio that's owned free and clear. So, if I want that same outcome in life, it became clear to me that a portion of my portfolio needs to be free and clear as well, right? And don't get me like if you listen to my content a few years ago, it's all about leverage. It's all about scale. But as I kind of getting closer to my end game and see other investors who hit the end game, um, I was like, okay, well, if there's a reason why they have a portion of the portfolio paid off, it's because you want guaranteed income. And if you don't get paid, if the tenant doesn't pay rent and my property is owned free and clear, I don't have much expenses. It's just property tax, it's just insurance. There's no mortgage, right? But right now, if a tenant doesn't pay, I still have to pay the bank, the mortgage. So, I'm still tied to the bank, right? That's why a lot of people say, "Oh, you don't own real estate; the bank owns it," which is true, right? So I think a healthy balance is like some paid off. So if you have paid off real estate, it's not going to beat inflation; it's going to match inflation. So if it's owned free and clear, it's unlevered real estate, and it the inflation is 3%, then your property will go up 3%. But hopefully, with real estate, the one that's levered, so you have leverage on it, you have debt on it. If your debt is 3%, but inflation is 7%, then you're basically eroding that debt, and your real estate that's levered is beating inflation, right? So if you have both, some paid off for that security, for that stability, for that cash flow, and you're just matching inflation, and then you have some levered that can help you, beat inflation, then that's a pretty good balance, right? To have both of that, and that's like probably the less stressful way to do it, right? Because like I said, with my current portfolio, I could literally dump everything, and then maybe after all the taxes, the fees, and all that good stuff, maybe I have $3 million left over of my $5 million equity, being very conservative. And then you just dump that into the SP 500, and let's say I have a $5 million stock portfolio. and you live out the 4% rule, that's 200K a year, right? So I know that's my minimum if I just sell. So can I beat 200K a year? If I get 20K a month, then I would, right? But we'll see. I have to see how I'll pivot to see if I can get there or not, or am I just, um, being crazy. So I know a lot of real estate investors. Like if you guys started today, I know it's harder, right? It's things are more expensive. Your interest rate's 7%. You're forced to put a larger down payment. Rents are a little bit stagnant. Insurance has been going up. Like in California, we had fires. Insurance is going up. In Texas, there's hurricanes. In Florida, there's hurricanes. So insurance is going up. Property tax is going up. To repair things is going up. So it's a harder game to play now, right? So that's why you really have to be a good operator, and it takes time to get there. Like I'm on year 8, and I'm still learning how to be like a good operator, and despite owning at one point 90 units of real estate. So it's really that slow and steady grind. And today seems grim. I mean, it's a buyer's market right now because everyone's afraid of real estate. So like I could buy, I bought, if you guys follow my journey, I bought two in Huntsville, Jack and Jill, and I bought it all cash. And original price was 310K. I bought it for around 260, right? And that's cheaper than my house I bought in Huntsville back in 2021 for 270. And this is like a few years later. So and these builders are giving you huge incentives and credits to buy these homes because they want to get rid of it. So it's a buyer's market. And like you said, you just got to survive the bad times, ride a bull run, and then by that point, you have more wealth that you know what to do with. So um, that's what it is. When I look back and reflect on my journey, right? I rode a bull run, want to survive this recession, and then the next bull run start to offload, sell someone, it becomes a seller market, so I can get more money, and then pay off some debt. And then at that point, basically start to like focus on don't have to be as frugal. Don't have I can start like spending a little bit more than I have been. Don't have to worry about the mortgage on my main house, and to really de-stress and basically make work optional for my wife and I, which is the whole point of me doing real estate, right? Because I want to not have to work if I don't have to want to, and then be able to spend time with my future kids. So, anyways, like you said, you really have to know yourself. Like you said, if you can't do real estate, don't do it. Just do the SP 500 dollar cost average. You'll be good in 30 years. Or if you'd rather do business, because business is super active, then you can start a business on the side. Like for me, I prefer doing a business where it's high profit margin, low overhead. So like that's what's great about social media. If you build a media company, not much overhead, high profit margin, but it's a grind. Or you can be like for me, I want to become a real estate broker that I'm working on to take me, I guess, 5 months to finish the prereqs, and because they limit my time. And then, but eventually, when I sell some new construction, it's all profit margin. I'm not going to have an office. I don't want to have people underneath me. So like if I sell a home and I get whatever $10,000 in commission, that's mostly profit. Um, so I don't have to sell a lot of real estate to like make enough money, but it's just more to like supplement my real estate portfolio. That's good enough for me. So, that's a business I would start. But yeah, there's a business where people like, I grew up in the Bay Area in tech, and people, started did startups and then they exited. Like another company for Teachable, the guy went to UC Berkeley, and I think he exited for like 100 million, something like that. And then at that point, you just can chill after grinding in a business, but you have to be willing to try that. And with business, it could be worth 100 million or it could be worth nothing, depending on how it goes, right? With real estate, there's always inherent value in real estate, uh, dependent on the market, but there's always inherent value in like a piece of real estate. So it's harder to mess up, which is why I went into real estate. Because like there's just less margin for error in my mind, and I wasn't good in business. But if you're good at business, then go down that route. There's no right or wrong answer, right? Um, so that's why I did real estate. I wanted to be able to retire a little bit earlier than most people, and I wanted to get rich for sure. And I thought real estate was the way to go, versus like doing a business, which is not always guaranteed. So it's really pick your stress, right? I have multiple videos about this. Like, are you willing to deal with the stress of real estate? The stress of real estate, the stress working a W-2 job, the stress owning your own business, right? The stress having to work until you're like 70 because you have to, right? So pick your stress, right? So for me, I picked real estate to be my stress for about 10 to 15 years, and then look to make it less stressful as I'm further along my journey, right? So like And, one could argue, well, if you're gonna be stressed regardless, might as well go for the biggest thing, which is business. But you have to have a certain, personality for business as well, right? And most likely be good for sales. If you want to make money in a business, you have to sell people a product, you have to sell people to want to work for you. You have to sell investors why they want to invest in you. So you have to be a really good salesman. I'm not. So that's why I went down real estate, for that reason. So, anyways, hopefully this gave you context as to, is real estate worth it? Um, and hopefully help you self-reflect, determine, is it worth it for you? Like I said, if it keeps you up at night, don't do real estate. It's not worth it. Like my parents couldn't sleep at night from owning real estate, so that's why they don't invest in real estate and told me not to. I could sleep at night. I'm $5 million in debt. I still sleep fine, right? Obviously, I can sleep better, and I'm working towards that. But for now, I'm okay with it. But maybe one day I may not be. So for me, it is worth it. But like you said, I was willing to put in the work and put in the grind. And if I lost, worst case, I was okay with the worst case scenario, which was living back at home with my parents, working my pharmacist job for a little bit longer because I lost some money, right? Um, so, anyways, gonna start looking at some questions now. So please drop your questions in the comments, and I'll start answering them. Don't see too many, so it should be pretty fast here. So, first question, Angel. Thanks for hopping on again. For rentals you manage, do you keep distance or meet tenants face to face and walk properties? Too much access made mines comfortable. Got cussed out, my fault. Your California properties, I mean. So I own a bunch in California that I used to house hack, right? And so I used to live with my tenants. So I would live in the master bedroom and I would rent out the other bedrooms. And so I saw them literally every single day. But from my experience with the house hacks, like, they just would go home, they wouldn't really cook. They just would microwave some food, bring food to go or eat out, and then bring it up to their room and eat it. And you don't really see them unless you just happen to be passing in the hallways or you just happen to be in the kitchen, or like I'm sitting in the family room and they just walk down to the kitchen. You might small talk a little bit. So I didn't really have too much face to face, but yeah, there were situations where like I had two of my roommates, they kind of had like a verbal altercation for some reason. Maybe it was early in the morning, and got a little bit heated, but I had to like go out there and, after they cooled off, de-escalate the situation. A little bit awkward, but it was only one time I experienced that. But typical gripes of roommates, like, oh, they didn't wash the dishes, or oh, it's messy not because of me, it's messy because of this roommate. Typical roommate banter, right? Regardless if you're renting it or not. But after I stopped house hacking, I moved out. I rented out the property to the same tenant that's been there for a long time. So the ones in the Bay Area, I don't see that much. The one in Orange County, at most, I see them once a year. But maybe the one in Orange County, once I start building my ADUs, I maybe will see them a little bit more because I'm gonna be dropping by the property to check out, not on them, but more so on like the construction of the ADUs. And I'm gonna hopefully film some content by my ADUs, so I can show you guys some of my real estate. Most of my real estate's too far. I can't really film there, or it's occupied, so I can't film. But the ADUs, I do want to film at the site, um, on that. So like I do see them face to face. Like it's kind of funny because like the tenant that I can see face to face, they are on a payment plan right now, and I know that every time I show up, they're like more awkward out because they know that like they owe me rent. So they feel a bit uncomfortable. But I don't know. It's always, I haven't had a bad experience. I try to be pretty responsible and professional and very reasonable. I'm very responsive. So a lot of my tenants have liked that. But I expect the same out of them as well, right? So it's a two-way street. And so far, I think I have a good relationship with most of my tenants that I self-manage. The ones I don't self-manage, I have property management. So it's just making sure that, I'm holding my property manager accountable. And now that I've been tracking my expenses like a hawk, in my real estate portfolio, I've been talking to my property manager a lot more. Like I literally, it's funny. So my property manager for Huntsville, I didn't know, and this is on me. I didn't read the contract as thoroughly. I misunderstood it, but I just thought they charged 10% of the rent. But if they coordinate any repairs, like through plumbing, through painting, they take 10%. So I logged onto Buildium, which is the software that they use. And again, my fault. I didn't really check Buildium that much. And I own this property since 2021. But since I've not been focused on buying real estate anymore, I've been really watching my expenses like a hawk. because I monitor every month now, as I should. I've been a bad business owner for the past few years when I was focused on scale. But anyways, I just saw like every time there was an expense, it'd be like $500 for plumbing, and then right underneath it, it'd be like a 10% markup fee to the property management company. And I was like, why is this happening? So I literally pulled up the contract and I snipped a portion of the contract and I highlighted it, said, hey, you only are supposed to charge a 10% fee if the repairs is over 10% or over $2,000. Excuse me. So if they're doing a major renovation that's over 2,000, they can get a 10% cut. That's what my understanding was. Right. But then she then said, oh, if you go on page 4, it says 10% of the gross receipts that they help coordinate. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Right. I didn't know that. That's on me. Thanks for explaining the contract. Right. Once again, that's on me. I didn't read the contract as thoroughly and I made assumptions, right? When you make an assumption, you make an ass out of you and me, right? So, okay, that's on me. But she was like, oh, well, basically I own 3 properties with them. I referred people to them to help them manage their property. So she's like, you know what? I could just waive those fees, can give you whatever, some credit back for it. Only a couple $100, not too crazy. Um, and we'll make it right because we know you're like a good customer and we want to make sure that there's no sour taste in your mouth. So I was like, okay, cool. So I just will follow up if I get that credit, or if not, at least now I know. And she was just like, if you see that expense moving forward, just let me know and I can remove it. Right. It's just the end of the year and we're doing our bookkeeping. So maybe it's hard to give you back that credit. So we'll see. And it was just kind of like funny doing that. I'm like, okay, like, this is how you're making your money, and like I guess it's on me. And I didn't have much um repair. So but this is how they get you, right? They make little fees by renting. And I thought like repairs and maintenance was baked into that 10% they get off the rents, right? And I thought that if they collect no rents too, that they don't get paid. I was like, wait, the tenant didn't pay in October, but you're still charging me 10% of the rents that I didn't get. That doesn't make sense to me. I thought we only got paid if I got rent, then you got paid. If I don't get rent, you don't get paid. Like, we're in this together, right? So, like it is a new property manager. So it could be someone just milking the system from me, or maybe they're just enforcing the lease, or maybe I made an assumption, right? But this is the joys of owning real estate, right? Like, once again, like, maybe they're stealing from me, or maybe they're taking advantage of the greatness of the contract um, to get more fees. But they know I'm watching now because I've been calling them out. I've been talking to them like recently. It's funny. I snipped the exact like I texted the property manager, she didn't respond to me. So I texted the owner my snippet, and then immediately the property manager called me right after I talked to the owner. Right. So like I hate to be that squeaky wheel. Um, but sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Sorry, tongue twister there. So, anyways, key lesson: watch your expenses like a hawk, right? And it's hard to do that when you're scaling. Angel here. I'm grateful to have paid off one of my duplexes last year. Investors often believe over renovating properties increases rental income, but being debt free allows us to retain more earnings. So, yes, I agree. Like I said, my tenants haven't been paying me in Huntsville for 2 months. And then we evicted, or we kicked them, we got the keys back. But in those 2 months, I didn't get rent. But what did I still have to pay? I still have to pay the bank, right? So if I get the rent, I get cash flow. If I don't get the rent, I still pay the bank. It's negative cash flow. So that's why you need large reserves, right? And then yes, over renovating properties. So like it's funny, in my 20-unit apartment complex, I had a unit that was burned down. I bought it that way, and the prior owner did not fix it up. I think they had a tortilla that they were cooking, and then they walked away, forgot about it, and it burned down the unit. And it cost me $40,000 to fix up that unit, brand new kitchen, new flooring. Um, they do what else? A new bathtub, remove the popcorn ceiling, the whole works, right? I literally spent $40,000 and I only got like $500 in rent. Versus like the unit next door wasn't as bad, and it just needed like some fresh coat of paint, needed like maybe some new flooring. The kitchen cabinets were okay. We just touched it up, painted it, made it look a little more clean, cleaned it up, and then we like did that, and I got the same rent. I was like, well, like I over renovated it, so I still got the same rent. So you have to know your market, right? Like, what's the minimum amount of renovation that you need in order to get the market rents that you want, right? Once you do know that, you know how to renovate. So that's when your property manager can come in to help guide you on that. But yes, like I am pivoting hard, like I said, towards I want a portion of my portfolio free and clear as stability, and I want a portion of my portfolio that's levered so that I can beat inflation. And together, that's a good portfolio for me to be financially free, right? So that's my hard pivot that I'm making, versus like leveraging and leveraging and leveraging and leveraging to the hill and build a house of cards and get slapped and wiped off one day. Next question here. I had real estate back in early 2000s. Then 2008 came up and had to file bankruptcy. Foreclosure, credit wanted 1.2 million, had other debts, rebuild myself back up. Debts are gone. Want to get back in real estate, but this time maybe go through tax lien. What do you think? Um, so that sounds very traumatizing to go through that experience. I hope to not go through that experience, which is why I'm slowing down, which is why I'm trying to optimize my portfolio, which is why I probably going to sell some to pay some off because I don't want to build a house of cards. I want to build a financial fortress that can produce income and retire me from my W-2 job, right? That's why I went into real estate, right? That's the whole point of me doing real estate. So, I want my experience in real estate to be good so that I continue to do real estate and don't want to give up. Like if my first experience was getting wiped off, I'd probably be traumatized too. That's why Dave Ramsey, he got wiped out in 2008. That's why he buys real estate all cash now because he makes a lot of money from his business and he dumps that money to buy real estate cash and he doesn't worry about debt, right? In terms of tax lien investing, I don't really know much about it. To me, it is a strategy to find maybe good deals and deal with distressed sellers, but it depends on your situation, right? Like, the key concept is you want to buy deals right, and there's many ways to buy deals right, right? You can buy new construction through Lennar, like what I did. You can go off market using direct mail. That's how I bought my apartment complexes. Um, or you just can be good at negotiating, right? With the sellers. But conceptually, you want to be able to buy deals right, and then once you buy it right, it insulates you from like a bad time, right? From a bad time and a bad market and bad interest rates. So like for me, my 26 unit apartment complex, case in point, I bought it for $500,000. It appraised at $800,000 day one. So I knew if I messed up, did everything wrong, I can sell it and at worst case, make a little bit of money or break even after all your fees and your taxes and all that good stuff. So buying right is very key. So if you can buy right through tax liens, go for it. Give it a try. That's what I would recommend, right? But the key is you want to make sure you buy it right. And from my experience of like, I'm not sure if tax liens are like auctions, but auctions, you have no time to do due diligence and it feels competitive. And you might end up buying a deal that you don't like. So I'm not a huge fan of the auction model, right? Next question, how often are you raising rents? So raising rents, on the ones that I self-manage, I raise rents about every 2 years. So every 2 years, I will look at the fair market rents on Section 8, which is public information. I'll look on Zillow to see what the rents are, and I'll compare that to where my rents are. So let's just say the market rents are $4,500 a month, and my rents are $4,000. And it's the 2 year mark. I look at Section 8 rent; it's around 4,500. Zillow is telling me about 4,500. At that point, I would usually raise the rents to somewhere in the midpoint. And I'll usually tell my tenant, right? Like, hey, like the market rent is 4,500. Here's proof. But since you've been so good, you've been paying on time, assuming they are. I want to raise the rents from 4,000 maybe to 42 or 4,300. So you're still below market rent, and it's a win-win because I don't have turnover. I don't have to deal with vacancy. I don't have to deal with repairs, and you know, I can maintain that relationship with my tenant. So for me, on the ones I self-manage every 2 years, the ones for my property management, it really depends. I think my property manager, from what I've seen, my 26 unit, I don't think they raise it as aggressively as they should because rents have been a little bit stagnant. But typically the tenant will leave, and then once the tenant leaves, then they'll raise it kind of closer to market rents, right? For my 20 unit, every lease renewal, so every year, once the lease ends up, they do raise the rents up. But there's more turnover on that property because of that. So it really depends. For my ones in Huntsville, it depends on the lease once again. So if it's a 1 year lease, after the year ends, we'll raise the rents, not by much. Or if they sign a 3 year lease, which I prefer because I want stability, then we don't really raise the rents for those 3 years. But once they renew, then we'll raise the rents at that point after the 3 year lease is done. Your property manager sounds like a thief. They very well may be stealing from me. Once again, um, let's see here. Would you buy another multifamily or single family home? That's a good question. So by multifamily, I'm assuming you're talking about apartment complex, like a 5 plus doors. I bought a 20 unit, I bought a 26 unit. So what I learned by owning C-class apartment complexes, which is where people get started. So if you're a beginner, you're buying C-class apartments, 1950s, 1960s. You're gonna go in, you're gonna renovate all these units, you're gonna raise the rents up to market rents, and then you're gonna manage your capex, and then probably do a 1031 exchange to sell it and be done with it, right? So I'm a buy and hold investor, but the longer I've owned C-class apartments, you see that all the capex issues start to stack up. You have old plumbing, you have old HVAC, you have old roofs, you have old AC units, and this capex is what kills your cash flow. Like, yes, I could be cash flowing $6,000 a month on my portfolio on that apartment, but I have one bad month of plumbing, boom, it's wiped off, right? So the most value in the apartment complex for C class is the equity that you forced. So I bought this for $500,000. I put $300,000 of renovation, all in for 800. It's worth $1.6 million today, right? So the best use of this property now is doing a 1031 exchange into a newer asset that maybe you have less debt on, right? And then basically, hopefully, it gets more cash flow or more cash flow than your last property, right? So imagine if I were to 1031 exchange this, take that lazy equity and use it to go buy multiple properties free and clear, and hopefully I get more cash flow, no debt. So knowing that, um, that's what you have to do if you do buy multifamily real estate is you have to basically buy it, force appreciation, do a 1031 exchange into a newer asset that's less headache, right? That's newer and hopefully gets more rental income and cash flow on top of that, right? So imagine me if I was selling my 26 unit for let's say $2 million, my loan is 400K, so I have about $1.6 million of equity, and let's just say after all the realtor fees and the taxes, no, I'm doing 1031 exchange. So sorry, after all the closing costs, which is 10%, so I have $200,000 in expenses. So that's about $1.4 million in actual equity. I could use that to go buy, let's just call it, 6 homes in Huntsville, Alabama, cash, free and clear, right? And each of these properties will rent out for $2,000 a month each, times 6, that's 12K a month. And minus property tax, minus insurance, minus your HOA, minus your property management fee, 12,000, maybe it's 8,000. Let's just call it. So now I get $8,000 a month in gross rental income with no debt. And I went from making $6,000 a month with debt because I made that lazy equity into more cash flow. So that's what I'm realizing I might need to do. So knowing that now, that's why my next deals are probably it's mostly single family homes for me. Because of that, because multifamily is a lot more work. You have to renovate it, you have to stabilize it, and then eventually you're gonna have to 1031 exchange it to get its best use out of the equity. And what people don't realize too, with multifamily, it takes a lot longer to sell multifamily. It takes about, I'd say, minimum six months, minimum 6 months. Realistically, probably 12 months to sell that versus single family home. 3 to 6 months, it's gone. Like in the Bay Area, if I list a Bay Area house for sale, it'd probably sell fast. So single family home is more liquid because there's a larger buying pool versus if you have multifamily, it's a niche buyer, right? And it's kind of funny, like when I bought multifamily, what was I doing? I was lowballing people with commercial real estate, with apartment complexes, mobile home parks, self storage, triple net lease. How do investors buy? They lowball. So if I bought using lowball, um, and when it was my turn to sell, what's going to happen to me? People are going to lowball me, right? So it comes around. But versus with single family homes, people might overbid depending on which market you're in, right? There's a crazy bidding war depending on which market you're in. So for me right now, it'd be single family homes if I were to buy, just because it's easier to exit and to liquidate, and less turnover ideally. Versus apartments is, I think the average stay of an apartment is probably 2 years, but the average stay of a single family home, especially in a good area, hopefully is longer than that, like maybe like 4 to 5 years, right? Um, so John, that's what property managers do. They make money off the landlord. Better to self-manage. Go in with 8% fees from the get-go. That is true. So, like you said, the property managers, man, if you're my property manager, if I was a property manager, I'd be a plumber too, and I would manage the property. I would do all the plumbing fixes for that property at a slight discount. But man, plumbers make so much money, especially if you have like an older apartment complex. Like I joke that the plumber makes more money than me on my apartment complex sometimes, right? So um, be be the plumber and the handyman. So my property managers should be the plumbers. Give me a discount and they can make money as well, right? But yes, that's why people are property management because they don't want to deal. They want the guaranteed income of managing the property, not dealing with the headache of everything else, right? Next question: what do you think of Ben Mala? The consultation has it. You can scale 10 million to 100 million. Why not scale like him and make it a family business? So honestly, in my mind, I don't care to be worth 100 million. Like I'm close to 10 million, and that's honestly good enough for me. Like I don't care for like the big mansions. Like if you look at most people who live in those huge mansions, they never live there, right? Like like private jets, private yachts. Like I don't really care for that. Like if I even at 10 million, you don't have to have a private jet, but you can fly business class comfortably. You can do semi-private. You can rent a yacht for like a week, right? You can still afford that. So, like to me, like that's good enough. Um, and more, to get to 100 million, usually you have to have a huge business out of it, and that does come with a headache. So for me, I just want to get to that first 10 million first, and then reassess my situation. If I'm good and happy and content with that, I'll just stay there, and that's my baseline. But if I want to, then maybe I'll strive. Um, towards 100 million, maybe I'll give it a shot. But for me, I want to make sure that I have time freedom first and that I'm doing the business because I want to, not because I want to chase this money, because I really want to and I legitimately enjoy it. Right. So like I said, that the way to be worth 100 million, you got to own a bunch of real estate or you got to have a business and most likely a combination of the both. Right. Like Thatch Nguyen owns a bunch of real estate. He has a business. Pace Morby owns a bunch of real estate, has a business, and that's how they get to 100 million. Right. I have no interest in doing that. 10 million is a good life. If you live out the 4% rule of 10 million, that's still pretty good, right? It's 400K a year, which is 30K a month. Like, what else could you do after that, right? So for me, I don't want too big of a house because that's too much of a headache, too much to clean. I kind of like to live a simple life, a more simpler life in my mind. And honestly, 10 million is way more than enough than I would need. Not even in my current state, it's probably enough. So yes, it sounds cool to say I'm striving for 100 million, but like in terms of your lifestyle, like whether you're worth 10 million or 100 million, the only difference in lifestyle in my mind would be maybe you have a private jet that comes with a headache. Maybe you have a private yacht that comes with a headache. Maybe you have more connections to people in an upper echelon, but that comes with a headache, right? So I'd rather kind of be at that 10 million and be simple and live a good life, right? Because like to me, I can still stay in a nice hotel at 10 million. I can still travel as I want. So I don't think I'll get that much more margin utility in life to go from 10 million to 100 million, unless it's just me wanting to check off a box that I did it. But it comes with stress, right? So, and it's hard. Like my family may have no interest in real estate at all, right? So it's hard to know until I have kids and maybe one will be interested in real estate, maybe one will not be. So, I'm not really aiming for it. 10 million is enough in my mind. And it's just about knowing when enough is enough. And a lot of times people are worth 100 million. It's their business worth 100 million. So they're asset rich, cash poor. I've been asset rich, cash poor for a long time now. I want to start becoming asset rich, cash rich, right? So I have to start selling some properties, lose some assets, but get more cash, right? So that's the trade-off. Next question, Andrew. Thanks for hopping on. What would the numbers look like if you sold all your multifamily to pay off your California houses? So my 26 unit, it's probably around 2 million. My 20 unit is probably below a million. So that's about $3 million if I were to sell it. Let's just call it for easy math. My debt is probably about 800,000 on that. So that's about $2.2 million in equity that's trapped there. Minus 10% off of that. So that's $300,000. So that's about $1.9 million in equity. In taxes, probably minus another $200,000 in all the closing cost, right? So I'm at $1.7 million of equity that I would have left over. Um, that would probably be enough to pay off, I think, 3 of my rentals I own in California, I believe. Yeah, so one I have about 700,000, one's about 500,000, another one is, um, probably 800, so not all of it, but most of it, and if I were to own, like, let's say 2 free and clear, I think one property rents for 4,000 a month, the other one, yeah, both rent for 4,000, so that'll be $8,000 a month in positive cash flow if they were free and clear on those properties. So yeah, it's an option. Very much well thinking. Like for sure, I'm gonna sell my 20 unit, and then use that to build my ADUs cash. My 26 unit, it's not on the market right now, but seeing the writing on the wall, it may be for sale, maybe for the right price. And that one, I would probably do a 1031 exchange into something that maybe I own free and clear. Right. So I don't know yet, but I'm focused on selling my 20 unit first, and then I'll reassess my 26 unit later down the road. But no, definitely an option where I could sell some out of state and then own some free and clear. Right. Or I could pay off all my ones in Huntsville on those free and clear and then ride off along to the sunset. Right. Do I rent to Section 8? Yes, I do. One of my tenants in my single family homes rents Section 8, and some of my apartments are Section 8. I like them because it's guaranteed rents. So if my tenant lost their job, Section 8 will cover their portion, which happened during COVID. And but they do annual inspections and you have to do paperwork. And a lot of times it's a government, right? Subsidy. So it takes a while to get that first check from Section 8. But once you get that first check, it's nice and easy, right? So that's how I kind of do it and deal with it. With that, let's see. Even if I accumulate millionaire status, I would live below my means. So yes, I'm in the same camp. I'm worth multi millions, and I still live below my means. Right? I live below my means as most pharmacists. Most pharmacists in California make about maybe 160K. I live below them still. I make more than that as a pharmacy manager, but I still live below my means for that. Um, so that's really a thought. Like I think to have true wealth, you have to live below your means. Period. Right? It just hopefully that if you're making 50K a month, you live on 30, right? So 30K a month is still good. So it's really that's the foundation to building wealth. Living below your means, having margin to invest and build assets that give you passive income. What would it look like to sell a 20 unit and use the proceeds as a large down payment on a refinance on your primary residence? So let's just say I sold my 20 unit for $1 million, being generous, minus 400 for the loan. That's $600,000 left after all the taxes, depreciation, capture the fees. Minus 200, I have $400,000. So that's enough to basically pay off half my property or my primary, and I can refinance it to like a 20-year note at a 5% interest rate. Yeah, I think I did that math actually. And it's roughly going to be about 450K loan, 5% interest, 20-year amortized. And I think that's about roughly, I think it was $3,500 a month. I forgot what the math was. So it lowered me from $5,500 to $3,500 a month. So it saved me $2,000 a month. And obviously it'd be faster to pay down if I were to do that. So it's an option, right? If I sell my real estate. So for me, I think I'd rather take that 400 and dump it into the ADUs on those free and clear. And once they're done, that one's going to generate about $7,000 gross. Yes, I'm gonna have property tax. I'm gonna have insurance that may go up, but maybe it's $6,000 net. Sorry, I had it mixed up. $6,000 gross, maybe $5,000 net, and that's $60,000 a year. I can use that to pay down my primary faster as well, right? So there's multiple options that I can do. I'm leaning towards the ADU option. So anyways, thanks for those questions. Hitting the hour mark here. Hopefully you got to see, is real estate worth the stress? And you can reflect on, is it worth it for you? And it's individualized, right? For me, it's worth it for me to do the stress. For you, it may not be. So anyways, hopefully, if you're interested, check out the school community on a free trial. Try to do calls, once a week there for Q&A, very casual conversations. If you want to ask me face to face, I have my coaching in my courses. If you're interested, just lower the price of my course recently. If you want to use Steadily Insurance to see if you can save money on your insurance policy, I switched 3 of my policies over and I saved about $500 each, right? I increased my deductible to 10K because I have reserves. So check that out. If you only use Lending One, who's my current DSCSR lender, if you want to send me an email, all my link tree. Otherwise, please like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much and have a good weekend.